any moment, President Trump will hold a meeting in the Situation Room. This as Iran vows to inflict irreparable damage on the U.S. if it joins Israel's fight. And we're also following breaking news here at home as Karen Reed is acquitted of killing her police officer boyfriend. I'm Casey Hunt. Welcome to the arena. We are joined by Anderson Cooper, who is live in Tel Aviv and will be here with me throughout the hour because right now the U.S. is set to deploy a third aircraft carrier strike group near Israel. And the State Department is preparing flights for Americans who want to leave the country. Sources tell CNN that an American military aircraft has already been used to evacuate some embassy staffers and their families. Just moments ago, we heard from President Trump for the first time since this morning when he said he gave Iran the, quote, ultimate ultimatum.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. We'll see what happens. I've been asked about it by everybody, but I haven't made a decision.
All right, so Anderson Cooper on the ground there. You heard him say again late today that he has not decided. What have you been seeing, hearing throughout the day there today?
Here in Tel Aviv, it has been relatively quiet. There was one air raid siren that went off several hours ago. People across the city instructed to go down into shelters in the facility in the hotel where we are. Everybody did that. Then soon the all clear rang out. That's become obviously a common occurrence, although less and less here in Tel Aviv and elsewhere in Israel as the number of the abilities of Iran seem to either be degraded or at least they are holding back on some of those missiles as the number of ballistic missiles they have may be dwindling. Israel has continued to have what they say is air superiority, air control over the skies over Tehran and elsewhere, and they have continued sustained attacks at targets throughout a number of locations in Iran. But a lot, everybody here is still waiting to see what happens with the United States. What will President Trump decide? They've been following statements made by him throughout the day very closely, as you've been reporting. The president not saying one way or the other what he has decided, and that he hasn't, in fact, decided what he's going to do up until the last minute that he needs to. So there's a lot of questions that remains, but life continues here in Tel Aviv. There were people out swimming the ocean, walking along the shore, watching the sun set. There's a calmness here, I think, or maybe a routine nature that we didn't see here from what I've told days ago. But it is certainly, obviously, foremost on most people's mind and watching what the U.S. is going to do, Casey.
No,
I want to bring in CNN Chief's international security correspondent Nick Payton Walsh and also CNN senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes right now. Kristen, to you first. We just heard from the president a few moments ago. What more have you learning?
Yeah, Anderson, we've been talking to a number of his advisors, aides. They say that he is talking about this constantly, that there are a lot of people in his ear, and he is still trying to determine what exactly the U.S. is going to do. One of the questions that he has continued to ask the people around him is it possible to get in and get out? The one thing Donald Trump has stressed over and over again is that he doesn't want any kind of long, prolonged war that the United States is involved in. That's something he also campaigned on. Now, he's been talking about this, as I said, all day, both to the press and behind the scenes. We're told he has a meeting in just about an hour in the Situation Room with some of the top principals. We've been seeing some of the cabinet members arrive. We saw the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, walk in just a few moments ago. Now, Donald Trump earlier in the day said that he had given Iran an ultimatum. This is what he said.
Mr. President, have you given the Iranians an ultimatum?
You could say so. They know what's happening. Maybe you could call it the ultimate ultimatum, right?
What essentially was that, though? What do you mean?
I don't want to say it. Look, give me a break. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble.
Now, a couple of things to note here. One, he's kind of vacillated for the last several days between a diplomatic approach and a more bullish approach. And we've obviously heard in the last several days this escalation in his aggressive rhetoric. But the thing to note here is that Donald Trump, while going back and forth, has again continued to question what exactly it would look like if this did unfold. And he did say in the Oval Office just minutes ago that he was talking to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, on a routine basis and urging him to keep going. We'll see what comes out of this meeting that's happening any moment now.
Yeah, I want to go to Nick Payton-Walsh. Nick, Iran's deputy foreign minister tells CNN that they would, quote, have no choice but to retaliate if the U.S. joined Israeli offensive attacks and striking at Iran. How are the president's comments about possible U.S. intervention being received by Tehran?
Yeah, I mean, we heard the second time since the beginning of this phase of the conflict from the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and his comments were fiery, potentially, talking about irreparable damage. Didn't say precisely to who if the US intervened. He didn't specifically threaten US bases in the region or particularly rail against Donald Trump himself. So a lower end on the combative scale from the Supreme Leader there. And the notion, of course, that surrender was on the table, washed aside by him. Of course, a country that has decades railed against the great Satan in the United States can't potentially suggest that they would simply give up. And indeed, if talks were entered into now by Iran, it might potentially begin to look like some form of surrender. They have very few military cards, it seems, left to play. We've seen the number, I'm sure you've seen where you're, Anderson, the number of missiles fired every night diminish significantly. One, it seems, just fired in a recent raid by Iran, a heavier, larger type of missile, but that was intercepted. And there are suggestions from experts we've spoken to that their stockpile over the last 15 months of launches has been significantly diminished, those that can hit Israel, from the 2,000 estimate early last year to possibly anything between 200 to 1,200, depending on how you're counting this and how many they originally had, plus their launchers taken out on the ground and days more of strikes against military infrastructure and the damage indeed that will have done. Trump just saying how so much damage was done simply on day one. So I think Iran is in a series of bad choices here. It can't really pursue diplomacy and not seem exceptionally weak. It has very few reduced military options. Perhaps it's an exceptionally hard, tough thing to do to build a nuclear bomb in peacetime, let alone when you have the Israeli Air Force above you. Trump's options not necessarily as good either. If they do go for Iran's nuclear program, they have to be absolutely sure they extinguish it. And do we really think after this much conflict around Tehran that the secrets of that nuclear program all still reside in the Fordo complex, that impregnable mountain layer that only the US can penetrate with its bunker busters? I'm not entirely sure, but still a key decision for Trump here. But ultimately, Iran massively weakened at this point.
Yeah, Nick Payton-Walsh, Kristen Holmes, thanks very much. Casey, I'm going to throw it back to you, and I think Nick raises a number of important questions. In particular, there's been so much focus on the idea of if the U.S. was involved, it would be to try to destroy that Fordo facility, that heavily fortified compound. But even if they chose to do that, even if President Trump chose to do that and chose to use multiple numbers of those bunker-busting bombs carried by B-2s, which are the only planes that can carry them, and only the U.S. has them. The question is, how do you verify that that site is actually destroyed, and how do you verify that that's the only place there is nuclear material, enriched uranium, that hasn't been moved to perhaps other locations? Does that require some sort of boots on the ground, some sort of special forces on Israel's part? A lot of questions on that.
Yeah, no, so many questions. And, you know, Anderson, I mean, one other big one, and I'm curious if, you know, as you've been talking to officials there, if you've heard anything about it, is whether Israel and the United States would be on the same page in terms of the end goals, because you obviously hear the phrase regime change being thrown around politically here. What's your sense of that piece?
Yeah, well, as you know, we've heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu over the last 6 days, trying to talk directly to the Iranian people, encouraging them essentially to rise up and create their own regime change. The ripple effects of any kind of attempt at regime change or even successful regime change, what that actually looks like, who would actually take over, who would succeed the supreme leader, what could it lead to? As we have all witnessed the results of attempts at regime change in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in all throughout this region, in Libya, all of it, which had unintended consequences which the U.S. and other powers could not have predicted.